The wind howled through the tall pines like a siren of the wild, sharp, cold, and filled with something old and dangerous. Snow wasn't just falling, it was tearing sideways, carried by a relentless storm that had kept the mountain paths buried and silent for 3 days. Caleb Dawson, a seasoned forest ranger with frost clinging to his beard and joints that ached with every step, pulled his wool collar higher around his neck. His eyes narrowed as he studied the tree line ahead. He had lived through enough winters to recognize when nature wasn't just cold, it was hiding something. Beside him, Bruno, a scarred, one-eared German shepherd with a dusting of snow over his back, froze mid-step. The dog's nose twitched, ears perked, and then he was off, leaping down the slope with silent urgency. No barking, no warning. Just raw instinct. "Bruno?" Caleb called, but the dog didn't stop. He was already digging through a snowdrift at the base of a rock crag. Caleb followed, breath-catching, heart thumping faster than it had in years. He stumbled through the snow, barely keeping pace. Then he saw it, just a flash of color. Fingers, small, still, and pale as ice. "Oh, Lord," Caleb gasped, dropping to his knees beside the dog. "Hold on now, we got you." Buried under the snow, curled in on herself like a broken bird, was a little girl no older than 10. Her skin was a chilling shade of gray, lips tinged with blue. Clutched in her hand was a tattered piece of cloth, dirty and soaked, like it was the only thing tying her to the world. "Lena," Caleb breathed. He knew her face, he'd seen it on the posters all week. "We found you, sweetheart." He shrugged off his heavy coat and wrapped her in it, pulling her close against his chest. She didn't stir, didn't speak, but her breath, faint and fleeting, was still there. Bruno stood nearby, his body still as stone, eyes locked on the tree line like a sentinel, guarding something sacred. The cabin was old, built to survive storms, not welcome guests. Inside, the iron stove crackled, its orange glow pushing back the chill that clung to the walls like mist. Caleb crouched near the fire, tossing dry wood into the flames, but his eyes kept flicking toward the cot. Lena lay there, wrapped in layers of wool, pale and still. Her clothes were soaked, her hair stuck to her forehead. The shallow rise and fall of her chest was the only proof she was still with them. Bruno lay at the foot of the cot, unmoving, eyes fixed on her like he could see the storm she carried inside. Caleb had left a mug of hot broth beside the bed, untouched. He hadn't tried to force it. Sometimes silence had its own kind of language. Outside, the wind shrieked again, rattling the walls. Lena stirred. Her eyelids twitched, then lifted slightly. She didn't speak. Her eyes moved slowly, scanning the room, the fire, the man by the stove, and then they found the dog. Bruno didn't move. Just blinked once and laid his head back on his paws. Caleb waited, letting her look, letting her breathe. Then, quietly, he said, "You're safe now. This is my cabin. Name's Caleb, and that's Bruno." She didn't answer, just flinched when she tried to move. "Your foot," he said gently, "looks like frostbite. I need to take a look." She didn't resist, though. Her eyes watched every move he made. He knelt beside the cot, carefully pulling off the wet sock. Her toes were swollen, 2 of them a sickly bluish hue. Caleb exhaled slowly. Bruno stood, patted closer, and pressed his nose against Lena's arm. That's when she moved, just a little, fingers reaching, curling into his fur. The hours dragged by without sleep. Caleb sat in the rocking chair, firelight flickering across the log walls, shadows stretching and crawling. Outside, the storm still raged. Lena hadn't cried, hadn't spoken. Just lay curled under blankets, her small hand buried in Bruno's thick fur. He didn't leave her side. Near dawn, she shifted, slowly sat up. Her hair hung in tangles, her face half lit by the fire's dying glow. Without speaking, she reached into her coat pocket and pulled something out. A rag, once white, now stained, stiff, and folded tight. She set it beside her. Bruno perked up immediately, ears forward, body alert. He approached it slowly, sniffed once, and froze. His nose twitched again. Then came a soft, low whine. Caleb's eyes narrowed. "Bruno?" he asked. The dog didn't bark. He just stared at the cloth, confused. Caleb stepped forward and picked it up gently. A sharp smell hit his nose chemicals. "Paint, maybe, or something harsher. Where did this come from?" he asked softly. Lena didn't answer. Her gaze stayed fixed on the blanket. Bruno let out another whine. Not fear, not anger, something deeper, uneasy instinct. The scent was wrong. It didn't belong to the mountain. Dinner went cold that night. Lena sat hunched in a corner, wrapped tight in a jacket several sizes too big. Her fingers picked at the hem. Caleb didn't push. But he had to ask, "Lena, was someone with you when it happened?" He waited. No answer. Then a shift. Her shoulders lifted like she was about to breathe, but it caught. Her lips moved. Nothing came out. Then she buried her face into Bruno's fur again. Caleb backed off. That night, after midnight, silence wrapped the cabin. Lena sat near the fire. Bruno curled at her feet. She hadn't spoken in hours. But now, as the flames softened to glowing coals, she laid her hand on Bruno's head. "I waited," she whispered. She promised we'd stay together, but when the storm hit, she left. Her voice cracked. "I hate her sometimes, for leaving, for not coming back." Bruno gave a quiet, sympathetic whine. "But I miss her more than I hate her. And if you know where she went, I want to know why." She didn't expect an answer. But Bruno's ears twitched. He lifted his head and stared at the door. Then, slowly, he rose. Near midnight, Bruno rose. Suddenly, and padded toward the cabin door. He let out a low whine, pawing softly at the wood. Caleb stirred from half-leap. "You need out, boy." Before he could stand, Lena was already there, awake, standing barefoot on the cabin floor, eyes locked on Bruno. "Hey, where are you going?" Caleb whispered, rising. She didn't answer, just opened the door. Bruno stepped into the snow, tail low. Lena followed. Caleb grabbed his coat and trailed them into the moonlit woods. They stopped at a snow-laden pine. Lena crouched. Her breath was visible now, short and shaky. She reached out and brushed snow from the bark carved there, faint but deliberate. "Forgive me." She touched the letters, and for the first time she spoke, barely a whisper. "Maya didn't leave me." They stood together under the cold moonlight. Lena's breath puffing against the pine's dark trunk. Bruno sat alert beside her, ears tilted forward, eyes scanning the trees. Caleb remained a few paces behind, coat stiff against the chill, watching them as if witnessing something sacred. Bruno rose and padded away, crisp snow crunching under his paws. Lena followed without hesitation. Her small frame dwarfed by the ancient furs, she slipped her bare toes into the snowbank and followed the dog's straightforward path. No detours, no hesitation. They entered a shallow creek bed, frozen and uneven. Bruno leaped from rock to rock, breaking crusted ice as he went. Lena tracked his steps carefully, mimicking his balance. When the dog paused, she paused. When he sniffed the air, she inhaled sharply. At one bend in the trail, Bruno stopped abruptly. He lifted his head, nostrils flaring. Then he turned, backing toward Lena, tail sweeping blocks of snow. Lena knelt and laid a hand on Bruno's flank. She met Caleb's gaze briefly over her shoulder, fear and trust mingling in her eyes. He's showing you something," Caleb whispered. Lena nodded, feathering her fingers through Bruno's fur. Then she moved forward. Bruno led her into a narrow hollow set between snow-dead boulders where the air smelled faintly of pine resin and wet earth. There, beneath a fallen branch shaped like a cradle, lay a faded blue backpack. Lena froze. Bruno nosed it gently. Lena reached forward, breath shallow, and unzipped the torn zipper. Inside, wrapped in a threadbare towel, was a small tin box sealed with aged tape. She paused, looked. At Bruno. He whined softly as though urging her forward. Lena lifted the box with trembling fingers. In that moment, everything changed. Bruno wasn't just a guide. He was the keeper of a trail meant to tell the truth. Lena sat cross-legged in the snow, the box cradled in her lap like something sacred. Bruno sat close, his fur brushing her side, his eyes never leaving her face. She peeled away the tape slowly, her breath catching with each tug. Inside, carefully folded, was a worn piece of lined paper and a photograph, creased but intact. Lena picked it up first. The photo showed two girls, herself and Maya, arm in arm, smiling in the sun near a cabin porch. Maya's eyes sparkled in that picture. Lena stared, blinking hard. She turned to the letter. Her fingers trembled as unfolded it. Elena, if you find this, it means I never got courage to say this out loud. I never meant to leave without a word. I thought running was easier then. Facing what I broke, the day of the storm. It wasn't just snow that buried us. I made a choice and it cost too much. I know you don't understand now, but maybe someday you will. I wasn't brave enough to come back. I wanted to, but every time I got close, I saw the pain in your eyes, even in my dreams. I hope this letter finds you when you're ready. I hope you can forgive me. Or at least remember the part of me that loved you more than anything. Lena's eyes blurred. The wind picked up, fluttering Feckerner of the letter in her hand. Bruno leaned in, pressing his head gently against her arm. Why didn't you stay? Lena whispered. Why didn't you just say this before? She looked up into the night, eyes glassy, voice cracking. I waited, Maya. I waited so long. Bruno let out a low, aching sound. Not quite a growl, not quite a whine. Just something that said he remembered too. By dawn, the forest looked quieter than ever. The snow lay pristine, untouched, except for Bruno's paw prints and Lena's small steps. Caleb led them back to the cabin, but somewhere inside, a knot waist-tightening in his chest. The morning routine was subdued. Caleb went to fetch water from the creek. Bruno lay near the stove, eyes following every stray movement. Lena sat on the cot, clutching photograph and letter she had found still curled around Bruno's side. Caleb returned with a tin mug of water and soft bread. He offered it to Lena, but stared at the letter instead. He looked at Bruno, waiting. But the dog remained motionless as if ensuring safety until Lena was ready. Their wassailants, thick and careful. Finally, Lena lifted the photo, turning it over in her hands. She swallowed hard and looked at Caleb. I need to tell them, she said, voice small but steady. They need to know who Maya really is. What happened? Caleb nodded without surprise. He had been expecting this. He helped at her stand, brushing snow from her coat. Bruno got up too and pressed his body against her legs for reassurance. Caleb reached into his pack and pulled out his radio. We'll need to get out, he said. Bring this to the station. We can't leave things hidden. Lena folded the letter carefully, placed both it and the photo into the tin box and sealed it again. Outside, the wind shifted. A branch creaked ominously overhead. Bruno looked up. Lena hugged him reflexively. Caleb climbed out, looked back at them in the doorway. Girl, dog, letter, and felt the calm before everything changed. He closed the cabin. Door softly behind him. The sky had turned pale when Caleb, Lena, and Bruno reached the edge of Fefrest. Steam curled from Lena's breath in the cold air as she watched Bruno at a low embankment. He sniffed the ground, nudged loose soil with his muzzle, uncovering faint traces of footprints, small, muddy, child-sized. Lena's heart pounded against her ribs. Bruno stood and turned back, tail wagging slowly, eyes urging her onward. Lena nodded, brushing snow from her coat, stepping forward into embankment. Caleb followed, pulling on gloves, watching Lena's every step. Bruno led them along a narrow, hidden trail, draped in pine needles and frostless stones. A few yards ahead, Bruno froze mid-track. He scented Firth, then trotted forwards, then stopped short. Lena knelt beside him and saw what he had uncovered. A child-sized sneaker buried in leaves and thin snow. Lena's breath hitched. She picked it up, inspecting the scuffed pink fabric, mud crusted around the sole. Brun nosed the shoe gently, his breath warm against speckled rubber. "Brun," she whispered, voice trembling. The dog turned and looked at Lena, then at Caleb, urgency in his posture. Caleb bent down, took sneaker, then checked the surrounding ground. Their faint marks led down toward a collapsed wooden shed with rusted hinges. They approached, Lena's steps hesitant. Bruno steady at her side, tail low but alert. Inside Feast, Lena found something more. A faded lunchbox decorated with princess stickers. Bruno growled softly, stepping toward the back corner, head low. Lena followed, crawling into the darkness. There, nestled on a timber beam poking from the ground, was a pair of tiny gloves stained yellow. Lena's eyes filled with tears, but she swallowed them. Steadying herself, Caleb shone his flashlight across the items. Lena placed sneaker and lunchbox beside Bruno's paws. Together, they had followed Fella's trail. The truth lay just ahead. They gathered the items gently. Caleb marked the location on his GPS, and for a long time none of them spoke. Theseulin said enough. By the time they made it back to the truck, the forest had softened into thawing light. The snow had thinned to patches of slush when Caleb's truck finally pulled into Cedar Hill Rescue Station. Bruno jumped out first, tail swaying, nose twitching, like he already knew what waited inside. Lena stepped down slowly, her legs still ached from the cold, but her heart beat faster for another reason, something unspoken just beneath surface, inside. The lobby was quiet, except for the soft hum of a heater and the muffled bark of dogs in kennels. Caleb led the way toward the small back room where lost hikers usually waited to be processed. The moment the door opened, time seemed to pause. Maya sat on the wooden bench, hair tangled beneath a wool hat, fingers wrapped around a cup of black coffee. Her eyes lifted when she heard the creak off the door and widened. "Lena," she whispered, voice cracking. Lena stood frozen for a moment, her fingers tightening on Bruno's leash. Then she took one step forward and another until she was running. Maya dropped the cup. It shattered against the concrete floor just as Lena threw her arms around her sister. They collapsed to the floor together in a tangle of limbs and tears. Maya held her like she was afraid she'd disappear again. "I'm sorry." Maya choked out again and again. "I was scared. I didn't know how to fix it. I thought leaving was the only way not to break you." Lena's face pressed against hers held her. "You didn't break me," she whispered, "but I missed you so much. I thought you forgot." Bruno lay beside them, his chin resting on Lena's knee. Lena pulled back, her eyes full of tears, but steady. "You don't have torn anymore," Mia nodded. "I won't." Spring broke quietly over the mountain, melting ice into running streams. Lena stood at the edge of the pine trail, Maya beside her, both wrapped in silent teeth that no longer hurt. Bruno trotted ahead, nose to the ground, tail wagging with purpose. "Where does this one lead?" Maya asked. Lena smiled faintly. "Somewhere better." They followed Bruno as sunlight filtered through the trees, warming the damp earth and softening old echoes. This time, no one looked back. Behind them, Caleb stood quietly at the start of the trail, hands in his pockets. He smiled, not because the mountain gave back what was lost, but because it had shown them the way forward.